Oh, Chris Ballard has finally spoken. And let me tell you right now, after watching that, I am so excited for this offseason. I mean, that came off like a man who meant business, right? I mean, in full disclosure, I'm a Ballard guy, always have been, will continue to be, whether you are or not. How can you watch that press conference and come away with anything other than just rooting for him? I mean, how can you root against him after a presser like that? Now, whether or not we agree on Ballard's competence as a GM is absolutely irrelevant in my opinion, because the truth of the matter is we're all rooting for the same thing, right? We just want the Colts to win. And just because I think he's great and you might not, that doesn't mean that either of us is an idiot or doesn't know football. We can both have good reasons and come to different conclusions. You know, part of what I want to build here in this space is a place for Colts fans to have civil discourse, right? To be able to disagree in a manner that isn't decisive, but instead pushes conversations forwards, not backwards. So I'm hoping that in me saying that, some of you think twice before just going crazy in the comments. You know, I know some of you won't. Some people you just can't help, you know? I mean, some people are like animals in there, just coming for it. So regardless, welcome to the Riding the Bench Colts cast. You're in it, or maybe welcome for the first time. Is this your first time here? This is a podcast made by a Colts fan for Colts fans. I'm your host, Justin Alfiero, recording live, as you can tell, in my bedroom studio. The bed, what is it, a 5 out of 10 on the MAID scale? You let me know in the comments. So if you're a Colts fan, looking to help out a Colts fan, if you could just shoot the video a like, that's going to help this out tremendously. It's going to help me out tremendously. It's going to see more Colts fans see it. YouTube's going to look at me in a favorable light. I mean, this is like a win-win-win situation, and that is all we are trying to do. And as for subscribing, I'd be grateful if you did. But please make the decision as you wish. I'm not trying to force you to do anything you don't want to do, but if you're interested, you know, I'm going to be here every single week in the offseason. There's a lot of people making great Colts content out there, and if you watch them, that's totally great. But if you're looking to add another one to, you know, your little Colts binge list, maybe I'm your guy. But if not, it's totally cool. Make the decision at your pace. At the end of the day, I'm just here to talk about the Colts and hopefully provide a little bit of perspective. I think sometimes, whether I like it or not, what I've learned in doing this is that I come up as I don't know, sometimes I have like controversial opinions. I mean, I believe them. I'm not like doing like that Skip Bayless thing where I'm just doing it to do it. I mean, every now and then I try to facilitate discussion, but regardless, enough of that, right? As the title states, I know why you're here. You want to see a little reaction. You want to see what someone else thinks about Chris Ballard's press conference. And maybe I gave away my feelings at the top of the show here. And you watched it and you have your feelings, right? Now you're just kind of curious how other people are feeling. So I'm going to go through my thoughts, the takeaways, maybe even start speculating a bit based off of what Ballard said about what we can expect here as the offseason gets underway. So let me just get into my initial reaction. So right off the bat, you got to love Ballard just taking this right on the chin from the very get-go. I mean, just addressing the elephant in the room before anyone said a damn thing, right in his opening statement. Like out of a movie, the first words, right? Sitting there. I failed in that very charming Southern accent, or at least I think. I mean, I like his twang, but, you know, for me, it's just so refreshing to see a guy come out there and do that, right? No coach speak, or in this case, GM speak. No bullshit. This was full accountability from Chris Ballard. I mean, he immediately, before anyone asked, addressed the quarterback carousel and how it's affected the team in a negative way, which was hinted at by Nyheim Hines earlier in the season. If you remember, right before he was traded, he was kind of talking about that a little bit, hinting at, you know, some aggravation in the locker room. He's talking about the Titans and how they've had one quarterback since he had been there, and the Colts had had like 4 or 5, right? So Ballard was quick to address that. And then even at some point, a reporter was trying to ask him about his relationship with Irsay. And, you know, instead of kind of, you know, letting, because the reporter was really kind of, you know, asking him between the lines, right? And Ballard said, nah, listen, guy, I know what you're getting at, and I'm going to answer you straight up. And he did. He shot straight. he showed me, Chris Ballard, that not only is he aware of the mistakes that he made, but he's disgusted with them. And he's hungry to get better, and he's hungry to be better. Isn't that all you could ask for? I mean, for those of you who don't like him, can we at least agree that he handled this press conference perfectly? I mean, what else could you possibly want? And I think we have to be careful when judging Chris Ballard. No GM is perfect. I mean, could you look me right now? Look at me. Look me in the eyes. Stop scrolling elsewhere. Look me in the eyes. Can you look me in the eyes with a straight face and tell me that Howie Roseman is not one of the best GMs in football? I'll give you a second to think about it. It's likely that you think he is. And even he drafted Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson, right? So it happens. But at least we have a guy that isn't going to give us the runaround. He's not going to make excuses. He's going to shoot it straight. And you know what they say, classic saying, but it's true. Honesty is a virtue, and I always value the type of person who's going to give me the bad news, and he's going to be straightforward. He or she is going to be straightforward with me right from the start, whether or not it's the cool thing to say. I mean, you could ask my friends. I consider myself that type of friend. I'm always the one that's saying the shit that you don't want to hear, and, you know, maybe some people won't like me for it. Maybe sometimes it comes off as arrogant or smug or condescending, but at the end of the day, I value that honesty over everything. So, in his opening monologue, he did talk about, you know, some mistakes he made. And obviously he had mentioned the quarterback situation, but a reporter did follow up and asked him, listen, like, what do you think those mistakes were? And you know, it was a fair question, right? You know, Ballard was very quick to say, hey, like, the criticism was warranted. So, of course, as I just said, he mentioned the quarterback situation. But what I thought was interesting is that he said he underestimated how important continuity on the offensive line was. And to be honest, that's like somewhat of a surprising quote. But he did say that he thought the presence of their three guys, I assume what he meant. I assume Matt Pryor and Danny Pinter were involved in that, or Will Fries. I assume he's talking about Quentin Nelson, Ryan Kelly, Braden Smith. He thought that with those three, this is a five-man line, so over half your line in his eyes is set. He thought these other guys were just going to be able to slide into place. And it didn't quite do that, and it didn't quite go that way. Although he was right to point out that Bernard Raman made strides, or Raymond Raman, someone tell me how to pronounce it. He's right to point out that he made strides, and of course he went through growing pains. But Ballard said that he sees him as a guy going forward. I agree. I happen to like him. I think he's very good in this league, and you know, maybe he won't be playing left tackle going forward. You don't know how things are going to change there. You know, Braden Smith, right, was drafted as a right guard before we moved him to right tackle when we had Glowinski. Maybe he moves back in. Maybe Raman goes out to right tackle, and then maybe we get someone at left. Who knows, right? But in all of that and admitting the mistakes that he made, and of course he didn't get into each of them individually, right? He just got into the big ones. I thought that he did a great job of balancing humility and accountability with a little bit of sticking up for himself and setting the record straight, because I think it's deserved. Because when he was asked about being too conservative, he was right to point out the trades that he made. When you look at DeForest Buckner, you know, a lot of people look at that season when we traded that pick. That was the draft with Joe Burrow. That was the draft with Tua Tagovailoa. That was the draft with Justin Herbert. And he said himself, Chris Ballard, that that's the one draft he looks at that maybe there could have been an opportunity for a quarterback. I assume he means Herbert. I assume that maybe he could have traded up for Herbert, but he stood by it. He stood by the Buckner trade, and he should. Buckner is an integral part of this great, great defense that we have, and ultimately has played a massive, massive role in shaping the culture of what we have here. The culture. Huh? Yeah, you like that? Pun intended? No, not really. Regardless, he mentioned Carson Wentz, who, of course, was a Frank Reich guy, and he mentioned the fact that they thought that was a 5 to 7 year run with Wentz. Clearly, it was not. If you're anything like me, you're happy that Carson is out of here, right? But that was a swing, right? That was an aggressive move. To make it like it wasn't aggressive to go trade for Carson Wentz is revisionist history. Now, it doesn't mean he was right, as he said, which I agree with. But, again, aggressive move. Matt Ryan, aggressive move. And just because these things didn't work, again, back to what I said about Howie Roseman, even the best GMs mess up from time to time. To sit here and a lot of people, listen, I'm in the comments section. Maybe I'm in the comments section a little bit too much. I see so much negativity as if Ballard has just never tried to do anything. He's just never been aggressive. He's never made a good move. And it could not be any further from the truth. So with that, I want to get into basically my biggest takeaway, or my biggest takeaways. There's really two that I got from this press conference. One, there is definitely going to be a lot of change this offseason. By the tone in his voice, and by what I think sounded like legitimate anger at himself and legitimate disappointment in what he's been able to put on the field so far, I think we're about to see who Chris Ballard really is this offseason. And who that is, we're about to find out. But for me, I believe he's going to do what we know him to do. He's going to be aggressive and savvy in the trade market. And I believe we're going to see him cut some dudes whose contracts aren't favorable for us going forward. And most importantly, I believe he's going to prove a lot of doubters wrong and win back Colts Nation. Now, maybe that is just me being optimistic, looking at the glass half full. That's fine. I'll accept that. But if I accept that, can some of you accept that you're looking at the glass half empty? I mean, can we not just sit here and be excited? I mean, we have a guy that sounds hungry at GM. And again, sometimes I find that as Colts fans, we're somewhat spoiled, particularly us younger ones. I actually just turned 26. And I'd imagine some of you on the other end are probably in between that 18 to 30, 35 range, right? We have never seen this, like, an actual garbage organization. Like, the Colts, for as long as we have been alive, have been good. They've been competitive, and there's been a standard. And when you talk about pure trash, and honestly, spare me 2017? Spare me 2017, because we were kind of waiting on luck, the mysterious shoulder injury, and then we roll out there with Scott Tolzien and a young Jacoby Brissett, who ended up starting for us after 3 weeks? I mean, he was rocking like half the playbook. I forget exactly what it was, but he wasn't working with the full playbook. Other than that first season with luck, I think, what's fair is fair. It's not like we've been trash under Ballard. You can call it trash all you want. No division titles, I understand, right? Even though we have the Titans, who have been the 1 seed multiple times in our division. I get it. No division titles, the whole deal. Still made the playoffs, all right? We're not actually garbage. We're spoiled. And I don't say that lightly. We're spoiled by a great organization. A lot of you older Colts fans out there that are listening right now, remember the days where we were trash for years, right? The Jeff Georges of the world and so on and so forth. I mean, my Colts history is shoddy at best because, being a young one, you know how it is. History started when I was born. So, again, big takeaway for me is that we're going to see a lot of change this offseason, and we're going to see some players that we really like being gone, and then we're going to see some players that we're not so excited about being gone. That sounded weird. We're going to see a lot of players that we don't want gone. Guys that are fan favorites. And we're going to see guys that we want gone. This roster is going to look different next year. There's no question. Number 2, and I feel this actually wasn't one of my biggest takeaways. I added this in right before the show because I feel the need to point it out with some of what I'm seeing in the aftermath of this Ballard press conference, some of the quotes being thrown around. Chris Ballard, when asked about trading up for a quarterback and what he'd be willing to do, he said he'd be willing to trade heaven and earth to go to the number 1 pick. If he felt he had to, if he felt the guy was there. He did not say that he thinks the guy is there. He did not say that he's doing it this year. So no, he did not say that he's going to trade up to the number 1 pick this year. And the reason I feel the need to point this out is because I don't want us as fans to come back later in the offseason when he ultimately, in my opinion, maybe doesn't trade up to that number 1 pick, because I think right now you kind of have a group of guys, almost, is there a definitive number 1? I'm not quite as sold on Bryce Young as the next, and that'll be a future episode. Maybe even my next episode, I'm going to be going into kind of my rookie quarterback rankings and kind of my wish list for the Colts, and maybe there's surprising stuff in there. But spoiler alert, one of the surprising things is that I don't think Bryce Young is the best quarterback in this draft. In fact, I don't even think Bryce Young is the second best quarterback in this draft. But we'll talk about that when the time comes. Maybe some of you who have been following me already know who my top two are. Point being is, again, to reiterate, I don't want us to use this quote against Ballard because he never said he was trading up this year. He said if he felt the guy was there, he would. And he did a pretty good job of being non-committal in the head coaching search, in the quarterback search, and so on and so forth. So with that right there, that's my reaction, that's my takeaways, and just a little bonus here at the end. I want to give a couple of my favorite quotes and kind of pick them apart a little bit because there was a lot of good lines in this, man. I mean, this was an awesome press conference for me. I absolutely loved it. I watched it twice. When talking about the quarterback, Chris Ballard, and I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, said, "It's not about taking one to take one. It's about whether or not you're right." Chris Ballard, thank you for saying that. And I know this is an unpopular opinion. There is no good that comes in drafting a quarterback that you're so on or just don't like altogether because you're being pressured from outside forces to draft a guy because that's the traditional move to make. If you don't like someone, and I've said this before, don't draft them. And I appreciate Ballard pointing this out because you see an organization like the Jets, and they just draft quarterbacks. They just draft them. A guy like Sam Darnold, I didn't like him out of the draft. I love Zach Wilson. But point being, not the point. They draft quarterbacks, and the same fans that were saying, this is our guy, this is the savior, this is our future, 2 years later, when it's not working out, are tearing him down. So Ballard's right about that. It's not about just drafting the quarterback. It's about drafting the right quarterback. And I appreciate the fact that he brought this up because I think it is being missed by a lot of our fan base. We're just so thirsty for one, Not everyone just drafts 2 franchise quarterbacks like Peyton Manning and then just parlay that into Andrew Luck. That's not how it works. Teams go through pick after pick after pick after pick with these quarterbacks. Look at the Chicago Bears as a great example. As I just said, look at the Jets. We don't want that to be us, guys. We do not. Okay. Number 2, and I thought this was particularly interesting. He said one of the biggest lessons that he has learned in this job is that you don't start with an end in mind. And when you do, you could end up getting so caught up in something like your vision of what you want something to be that you miss out on someone good that's right in front of your face. And with a quote like that, that's an interesting one. Really not just in football, but in life. But for the sake of Ballard, I couldn't help but think about what could he have possibly been mentioning. He must have, if he learned that, there was a lesson somewhere. Something led to him coming to that realization. And I'm curious what it was. So I'm going to put my guess out there, and you could let me know what you think about this. I think that when he, Mr. Ballard, drafted Kwity Paye over Christian Darrisaw, who's now on the Vikings as left tackle. Very, very good. I think that was a situation of him because he loves the defensive line. He's drafted so many. It's storied. We needed that left tackle bad, and we neglected it. In my opinion, that's the biggest misstep he's made. And, of course, we ended up with Raymond Fine. But not drafting Darrisaw and drafting Kwity Paye, who I like, that is the one for me. That if I'm to look at that quote right there, that's what I'm thinking about. So, now that we've done that, you've watched the whole episode. That's it. We're 20 minutes in now, something like that, close to. I appreciate you sticking around this entire time, 20 minutes is a pretty decent amount of time. There's a lot you could have done. So for you to spend it with me and listen to me rant about my favorite team, I couldn't be more grateful. Now is the time, though. If you made it this far, I know before I said don't do anything that you don't want to do, but if you made it this far, now's the time to hit that subscribe button and get notified when I put out a post, which is going to be every week. That's my promise to you. every single week of this offseason, even when it's slow, I'm going to be coming to you with a video about the Colts. That's my promise. Shoot the video a like if you haven't already. Again, that helps push it out to more people. It's the likes and it's the retention time. Those are the two big things, right? And if you hit the like right now, you have helped me tremendously on both fronts. Of course, Instagram, me and my buddy, Asif. If you don't know, this is the Riding the Bench Colts cast. We have the Riding the Bench Eagles cast as well. If you go to our Instagram, we're very, very active there. It is show clips, of course, so, a lot of this week's content is going to be from here. But we also, we kind of enjoy playing with, like, the fun little clips and playing with those sounds, I mean, we have a lot of fun on the Instagram. We're very active there. So maybe you want to go over there and shoot us a follow. And if you've done all of that and you're still looking for a way to help out this show, just share it with one friend, just one, that loves the Colts as much as you and I. With that, you've just watched the Riding the Bench Colts cast, and until next time, go Colts.